Oh, we have to do the intro. Give me 1 second.
Oh,
I gotta slide in.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't know. Okay. Yep. There's like 20 questions here. Hey, got 20 questions.
Why don't you take the first one?
Sure. So the first question, I kind of like tried to reorder the questions a little bit in a way that kind of broke them up into different categories and then made it a little bit more like varied as we went down the list. So I hope you enjoy the order of things. The first one we're going to talk about is what is your favorite variant rule and subsystem? And I kind of, so first of all, we don't use very many variant rules on the shows. I know them, and I play one game where I use the multi-class variant rules, where you get to choose 2 classes and level up both of them simultaneously. So you're like almost twice as strong, but not really twice as strong. That's pretty fun, honestly. But you need a GM that really understands the mechanics to be able to balance the fights, because you really do have to take into account that your players are almost twice as strong. If you literally give them twice the difficulty that you normally would, they will die. But you can't give them normal difficulty stuff, or they will never take damage. So that's pretty good. I like deep backgrounds, to be honest, which is like a little bit more granular way of developing a background. I don't think it really adds anything to groups like the Court of Corvids group that's really into like the role play side of role-playing games. But I think for people that are very mechanics based and want to delve a little bit deeper into the role-playing side of things, I think it would really help to be like handheld down the road of developing your character a little bit further. And so that's why I really like it. And as for like subsystems, I didn't really know what that meant. I understand what variant rules mean, but like subsystems, you mean like the action like system or like variant initiative or something? I don't know.
I can go into that a little bit because
do it.
There are a couple of variant rules that I like, which is like the archetype variant, where you basically you start your game and you start with a dedication archetype, which I like.
Get a free like level or a free feat every other level that you can use to only take archetype stuff. So you like almost have to have one.
Yeah, so I like that. I think that that's really interesting and adds a lot of flavor to the game. As for subsystems, there are 2 that I really like. One that we use in Court of Corvids, and a second one which we have discussed on adding, and we will be adding in the next season. So spoilers. The first subsystem that we use is the divine items. That you all have items that you were given to you by a deity, and that deity they level up with you. So that would be a subsystem. That is not a system in the game that needs to be there or exist, but is there to add flavor. That isn't like additional rules or changing what the current rules work.
Have you used a relic as a player?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just want to see, because I was gonna say from a player perspective, it's also very fun. Now that I understand the concept of subsystem, that is definitely one of the best ones, because it is very satisfying.
So I play in a game we call the Hex game, which is basically my really good friend Josh, who lives in Germany. He built up this entire world and has made a giant map out of hexes. And each of the hexes is a different, different things happen based off of our roles. And it's got like different biomes, and like we can't see it until we enter it. Anyways, we have relics in that. I play a life oracle that has a cloak that heals, which is just basically just like, oh yeah, we never run out of health. And so it's really fun because the reason why I like relics is, one, you feel powerful when you have them and use them. 2, it's also really cool to have an item that progresses and increases with you. Like the rune system, I feel does that, right? The rune system helps you when you get a sword, you add runes and it makes it better and better and better and better, right? But the thing is that if there's a sword that has like a special like feature or something to it that isn't just a rune, you're just like, cool, let me just chuck this sword and let me get this new sword.
So and there's something else for scaling without scaling numerically, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm not going to scale by adding +1 to the number of dice that I roll. I'm going to scale by allowing you to change some drastic part of the way that you play. Like instead of being able to run away very quickly and just leaving your party there, you get the ability to slow your enemies if they try to walk up to your party. That's the kind of different thing that you get now. It's a completely new thing that you couldn't do before, and now you can do it. That's why I like that scaling better than just like add 1, 2 damage.
Yep. No. So I really like that. And then there is the follower system. I can't remember the exact name, but basically, if your character is going out and is trying to make their name known and stuff like that, they will gain followers, and based off their followers and different prerequisites, like you can't go above a certain amount of followers until you have like a base where that they can go. And I feel that is a system that I feel Moss is very much a person who would use that, right? Like Moss, I feel, is going around trying to get followers as she goes because she wants to be known. And I feel that is a really good system that allows you to do that exact thing.
Add a mechanic thing so that it's balanced, but also you get to like, it adds a level of satisfaction to that role play when you see the mechanical benefit from it, right?
Exactly. So those are the 2 subsystems that I really like.
Nice. I like them too. Now that I understand the term.
I will go over the next one, which is,
yes, please.
Where is the Necromancy build? I currently do not like the state in which Necromancy is in still. I could build a Necromancer right now. I just don't feel like it's a fun thing. So a real quick Necromancy build, if you want to build a Necromancer, the best options is going to be a Bone Oracle, and then you go into a Ritualist as a archetype once you're able to get to that point, which I believe is 4th level, and then you start making zombies, and that's it. Like there really isn't a ton that gives you bonuses or gets you better or makes your zombies better or like makes them cool. That's just like, here are the steps to make a zombie. And this is the most efficient way of doing that. Like the cool thing about the Bone Oracle is the fact that the Bone Oracle can choose to have take negative damage or not, right? So they can turn around and say, oh, instead of heal, I can cast harm, and I heal from negative damage. And since my zombies heal from negative damage, I'm going to cast harm, right? That's like the most efficient way to go about it, because then it will keep them alive. But I'm just not really happy with the state of how necromancy is.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of like in combat necromancy, right? There isn't like, oh, like one of my opponents died, you're mine now, come and like raise from the dead and do my bidding during this encounter. That's I think the kind of stuff that would be satisfying. That having been said, it wouldn't be satisfying for me because I'd never play a necromancer, but I'm trying to put myself in your shoes,
which is fine. Like it's not supposed to be like everyone's supposed to be, oh, necromancer's the best. No, and while I find that like play style very interesting, I just don't find it all that great right now. And chat brings up a very good point, which is having a zombie plus a final sacrifice is the best DPS. You're already topped off with zombies, so it's like final sacrifice is basically you kill one of your minions and it explodes and does damage to everything around it, which is I'll be honest, a great spell. But at the same time, it's just, I don't know, especially talking to Bowman.
Hold on. I just looked up Final Sacrifice because I'm pretty sure that doesn't work, and it definitely doesn't work. Attempting to cast this spell targeting a creature that you temporarily seize control of, such as an undead commanded by Command Undead, automatically fails and breaks the controlling effect. Is there any other way to control an undead that isn't Command Undead?
You can create undead.
With the ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is out of combat. So there's no way to in combat summon a zombie and then explode it.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Yeah, so you have to create, it's basically like you create something out of combat. You're going into combat with it and then destroying it.
Well, that's interesting.
What?
That's just interesting.
Yeah. So the reason why I haven't done a build is because I feel it's lackluster and not very interesting. They're like, here are the 3 hit points. Here are the 3 interesting things. You can cast harm and heal yourself. You can once you become a ritualist, you can automatically get the ritual spell without having to go and search for it from your GM, because you just get it, because that's how the ritualist works. And because you're a ritualist, you can cast it by yourself and you don't need as many people. End of episode, 30 seconds. Great. Like that's why there isn't a one yet. I want there to be, trust me. And talking to Bowman on our interview, and I flat out asked him, why does he hate necromancers? His response was basically like, we want necromancers to be really cool and really interesting, and like being able to control hordes of zombies versus like one or two. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that level. I'm hoping that as time goes on, we'll start to see a little bit more into the flavor of undead and more flavor into that kind of world of how that works. So, and Kat even says in chat, rituals be lacking, which, yes, I agree. There needs to be so many more rituals. There are a lot of really, 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 really cool rituals, but yeah, there's not enough for, there's not enough, period. End of sentence.
Yeah. And I just want to make something clear. What people are saying that, you can use animate dead to summon an undead and then explode it. I don't think I was specific enough. I meant on one turn to have an undead and also explode an undead. Because if you use animate dead, which is 3 actions, you almost certainly can't final sacrifice, which is 2 actions. I mean, even if you're hasted, that's still, you're not close enough. So, you can't do it in 1 action. So it's 2 actions for the same amount of DPS, which is substantially less good. That's what I'm throwing out there. That I understand that there are still ways to, in combat, get control of an undead, or to summon an undead more specifically, but that's not what I meant. I mean, in 1 turn, being able to do that is a little bit rough.
And there's a lot to it, because it's like, theoretically, you want to use final like, in the most optimal option, you want to have an undead that you can attack and do some damage by itself, and then you cast final sacrifice right before it would have just died, right? So that it's it's like, okay, look, it's got 2 hit points left. It's its turn. It's going to attack. And then you use final sacrifice and it blows up, right? That would be the ideal. But like having a raise dead to then be like, okay, I'm gonna use a single action to command it to move to where I want, attack once, because it's two actions, and then final sacrifice, which would be, that's a total of 6 actions to do that, right?
Do you think that like an exclusively out of combat summon necromancer would be viable if there were more options? Do you think that would be satisfying for you, or do you think it has to have in combat like creation of undead?
No. Let me get this right. I don't have an issue with out of combat necromancy, like that aspect of it, because in my brain, which is not how everyone's brain works, and is not how your Pathfinder 2nd Edition game works, is it makes more sense to me that raising the undead would take longer than 6 seconds, right? It feels like a thing that will take you minutes, if not hours, to prepare and get things ready. And that could just be the years of pop culture references to undead and raising the dead and all of that. It's not I want you to be alive. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, it makes more sense to me that zombie creation or undead specifically, I should say undead, because eventually you can create other things other than zombies. Like, you can create vampires, you can create other things, which is pretty cool. So I don't have an issue with it being an out of combat thing. And it's supposed to, being a necromancer is supposed to make your life difficult. Like, theoretically, is like, you shouldn't be able to walk into a town with like 4 zombies behind you and just be like, heading to the tavern. What about y'all?
Don't worry, they can stand. I don't need extra chairs, but get me 4 beers.
yeah, exactly.
I'm cheeky.
So it's like, it to me, like, that's the idea, is that it's not a viable in combat thing, but it's definitely a viable in dungeon thing, right? Sure. And Necromancer's going to get his lights punched out in a bar because he can't just be like, I'm dead. That being said, Necromancy is probably really, 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 really strong. The fact that heal is on there, all sorts of resurrection, all of that stuff like that is in the Necromancy school. So I think that there is enough to be able to make it there. We'll see. I definitely feel that there is some things that can be done that will come out in the future, I'm hoping. Not that I know of. But that will make Necromancers a really cool and interesting viable build. As of right now, it's just kind of boring, so I don't want to do it.
That's fair.
Krug, this one's a great question for you.
I don't think I like this question. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I will ask you, Jake, if you don't mind, if I talk too long.
I saw the notes.
Why does Krug like monks so much? Okay, there's so many reasons. So first of all,
all right, cool. That was enough.
You're a giant jerk. Okay, first of all, I very much like, just like in real life, a lot of the ideas, and this is not to say all of them, and this is not like what I personally follow in my own life, right? But I just like the ideas of like monastic teaching, like the fact that like you should let go of earthly possessions, and that does bind you to a lot of obligations that you maybe shouldn't be bound to, right? Like, why do I really want this TV? Why does breaking my TV make me stressed? It really shouldn't. If my TV breaks, I shouldn't care. I really shouldn't care about the thing in the first place. Why did I buy it? Why do I have money? Like, you know what I mean? Like those things, those ideas, while they are not perfect and while they're difficult to implement in your life, and maybe in the end, when you think about it, it's like a detriment to your life depending on who you are. I think it is a fun idea to think about, and so embodying that character in a role-playing game is super interesting for me. And then secondly, I love the like path to perfection concept, where you are like, you fully admit that you're flawed and you understand that you're flawed more than other characters generally do, and you can kind of hold that over people, right? Like it gives you this position of power in role play where someone's like, oh, but you made this mistake and ha ha ha, and you're like, yeah, I know I make mistakes. That's what I'm working on. That's my whole reason for existing, is so that I could make those mistakes and then get better and then make them less and then hopefully never make them again. So I don't know why you're trying to nana boo boo me with that. It just gives you such like an elevated like thing in role play, and it feels really good to me to be able to make mistakes in role play, because I don't know, maybe people don't know this about me, but one of the most entertaining parts in role play is not succeeding and like dealing with the consequences, to the point where I know it for a fact, at the very least, me and William have intentionally failed roles that we have succeeded. Like we fudge roles in the opposite direction that people would expect you to on a live show, where I've been like, Matt, I got a 4. So tell me what happens when I fail, because this is going to be funny. So
you're just allowed to fail, right? You can just say, I don't want to succeed.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I've said that before too. I feel like sometimes I do that, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, I got a 4. I feel like sometimes if I say that it was the dice that it would lead to a different result. You know what I mean? The other thing is the mechanics behind it. So the monk has like a lot of presence on the battlefield. You can be in a lot of different places because of their inherent move speed. And they also are, inherently athletic, inherently acrobatic. They can really get to most places and deal with a lot of threats just by being there. And that makes them really fun in combat, especially because, and I don't want this to sound condescending, our group is a lot of new players, right? Like Jonas, William, and Moss are all relatively new to Pathfinder, the Pathfinder system. They're definitely not new role players, right?
No, yeah.
They all have more performance chops than I do in their like pinkies, and they've all played other systems, but in this more mechanical, crunchy system, I don't think they had a lot of experience. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted like a more present battlefield manipulating type character in the first place, was to just kind of make sure that I could be there to help them, because Jake gives everybody one chance, not 2. You get to make one mistake, and then Jake will be like, here's the kind of consequence that you'll be facing. Okay. And then it's going to kind of pull itself back, and I'm going to let you succeed. Okay, now that if you do that again, you're going to have to face that consequence full on. And I feel like they all had that one with him already before we started Court of Corvids. And that's why we got trapped in a burning jail cell. And so that was kind of like my thought process, was like, this is how I can help everyone succeed. I want this group to succeed, and this is how I think I can best do that.
I will also say that just knowing you, I would say the reason why you like monks so much is because it's less about pure damage, which is like where I would say most people like to go. They're like, okay, I want to max out my DPS, because like let's be honest, we're all mid-maxing in some fashion, right? Even if you're not intentionally doing it, you're better at one specific thing than you are others. What I feel that you enjoy playing isn't the maxed out damage, but the maxed out battlefield manipulation. You very much like controlling and supporting, like across the board.
I like setting up other people, because it's like it adds a layer of interaction that wouldn't be there before, right? Like if you're a monk and you're grappling something and giving something the flat-footed condition so that your other characters can succeed on attacks against it, like there's a certain like, okay, that's just a mechanical like a bonus that you're giving them, but then you like think about the role play of it, and it's almost like a bonding moment for your characters. Like, oh, you can like fight together, like this is how this works. I think a lot of people don't take advantage of those mechanics in the game of like status effects that are built into the base actions that you can take, because there's one for most of the skills, or at least there's one for at least one skill that each character would have, right? Like there's a way to do it with charisma, to apply a debuff with charisma. There's a way to apply a debuff with strength. There's a way to apply a debuff with dex. You can tumble through. You might have to take some feats, but there's a lot of debuffs you can apply with just skill actions. And it's a really great way to make your party feel more realistic. Instead of like one person dribbling the basketball from one end of the court to the other, you're passing as you go, because that's how basketball works. It's a team sport. So is fighting in a dungeon.
Yeah. All right, we'll go on to the next one, which is what do you think is the optimal party size? I mean, 4.
I mean, yeah, we've played in larger groups, and that the problem of it is your turn too infrequently is real, right? And then also like the problem of you don't get a word in edgewise is real, and those really do kind of bring a game down for people. But then like if it's too few, no, you know what? We did that one game. I think it was Quarter Corvids, where it was just me and you. It was like a prologue thing. I loved that. That was fun as hell. So like, I don't know, between 1 and 4.
This is my answer. Whatever amount of people allows you to have fun. Second answer,
of course.
4, a 5th on occasion, is good. Like 4, I feel that with 4, there may be some sessions where one person doesn't get to play as much as other people, but then later on that person gets to do a little bit extra. But I also feel that allows there to be enough emotional connections with each of the individual people that it allows things to happen. And then like me as a GM, like I've done this. You can watch Court of Corvids. I have done these specific things where I go, I don't think that these two people have had enough interactions, so I'm going to put them in a place where they have to be in an interaction. An example for that, spoilers if you haven't watched up to the new Court of Corvids, there's a situation where I'm not going to spoil. There's a situation where I specifically put Remy and Moss together because I didn't feel that Remy and Moss got enough alone time. I always felt that when Moss was with Remy, it was always Moss, Remy, and Robin. And I'm like, no, these two characters, because I feel that Remy and Croog get along great. I want a little bit more Moss and Croog, but I feel that that's even at like a good, like it's there, it exists. But you know, I always want more. So 4, 5th every once in a while, having an extra person. And it also depends on how you're playing. Because I'll tell you, 4 people at a table with a GM is super easy. 4 people on computers gets a little bit harder. And the thing is that once you're like playing on Roll20 or something like that, it's easier for you to stack on more and more people. But I'll tell you, you're in my situation, it becomes less and less enjoyable because you're trying to make sure that other people get their time at the table, which means that you're doing other things. So Yeah.
you become less of a participant and more of a overseer, I
Yeah.
guess is the word
Yep.
to put it. Which it sounds like that's what you're supposed to be as a GM, but it's really not. You're a part of the story just as much as the players.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you don't feel that way and you're not having fun, then maybe look at your group size and see if it's maybe too much for you to handle.
Yeah. All right. How do you feel about the illusion of choice in RPGs?
So okay, I talked about this. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I was on the Nerdarchy Live channel. There's Nerdarchy, which is the normal Nerdarchy channel, and then there's the Nerdarchy Live where they do like long format content, and I was interviewed by them.
Mhm.
And I mentioned something that Jake actually said, that Jake made, which is that if you go down the left tunnel, that's where the dragon boss is. But if you go down the right tunnel, that's where the dragon boss is, because the next thing that the GM wants you to do is fight the dragon boss. And so no matter what choice you make, you can go backwards and you back through the last room you came in, and the dragon boss has landed from where they were, which was outside of the dungeon, and you just didn't know that because your intelligence was wrong. The dragon boss is wherever you go. It doesn't matter if you teleport to another plane of existence. That's where the dragon boss is, and there's always a way to justify it without making it feel like it was cheap, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That is the illusion of choice, and that is a thing that exists in every RPG, and it will always be there because sometimes the GM does not have something interesting for you to do, taking into account the actions that you have made, and so they have to railroad you to something interesting. They're protecting you from yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that is something that GMs should not even try to stop doing. That is a goal. The thing that it feel like that's what they're doing, that it should always feel like there is a choice, right? You should never intentionally make your players feel railroaded.
Now,
that having been said,
I was gonna say I was watching that interview, and the only thing that I would add to that is that if they go down the left side of the door, and you were planning on the dragon being on the right side of the door, and you move the dragon to the left side of the door, you still need to know what's in the right side door. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Like that's is like illusion of choice should always is a thing where it's like, okay, what best fits our playtime? What best fits this group? What best fits this scenario? And this is the thing, is that if you need them to fight this dragon, right, for whatever reason, right, your players will 99% of the time come up with a way that you never thought, right? Just you never thought they would do that thing, and you're just like, where did that even what happened to you as a child that made you come up with this now 20 years later, right?
Does your brain work like that?
But the thing is that, you know, I feel that good GMs are good improvisers, and they go, okay, yes, you do that thing, but then still are able to give them that information and or give them enough incentive to want to do the thing in which you are trying to push them to do. I will give it a great example. I, as a GM a few years ago, was running a campaign where Croog was in this, and I was trying to scare them. And they were in the city. The city was basically, these people were just repeating their actions over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, like walking back and forth or opening a window or closing it. And they found one person that was in the town that was not affected. And they said that, oh, it happened after the man with the octopus on his face. Like he had, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea was I was like hinting at there being a mind flayer, and the players all were like, nope, I have no interest, I'm out, deuces, bye, we're level 1, there's no way that we're doing mind flayers. And me as a GM is going, you're level 1, why would I ever put mind flayers in front of you? But I made it so that in the story, the actions that they were doing allowed them to continue to do the actions that they wanted to do, but all of the things that they were trying to do required them to go back to that town that they really didn't want to go to, and they were just like, okay, clearly this is a thing that we need to deal with. We need to figure out what's going on there. And they went there and they found out that it was a person that had I don't know if you know this, but mind flayers, how they create others is they have these like little worm things that they put in the eye and it just takes over the brain. It was a person that had them all over their body and had them on their face. And it was a small child. And when a small child sees this, they're not seeing mind flare, they're seeing squids on the face, right? And so it was just like this whole entire thing where it's just like, okay, this is what I want you to do. This is what I'm trying to get you to discover. And you're going to do that. We're either going to go the long slog or we're going to go over there and just check it out. And providing those opportunities to come back for them. Because it's like, that was a story that I had written, I had put together, and I knew that they would enjoy. And they were just afraid of it. You know, and that could have been me bad as a GM making them afraid of something, or it could have been players not like playing outside the realm.
Now that I remember what you're talking about, it's not bad. I don't think you pulled it off in a bad way, specifically because I personally felt like I was justified in what I was doing, and that you were treating what I was doing as though it were justified, right? You weren't like, oh, well, fuck you. You have to stay in this town. You were like, okay, you can leave. I'll come up with a different way to get you in this town, motherfucker. Like, which is totally reasonable. Make your players feel like their actions make sense, and then kind of work your campaign around it, right? If they're a bunch of scaredy cats and you expected them to be all brave and charging in, figure out a way for them to be able to do it a little bit more smart, you know, a little bit more sneaky, or maybe a little bit more diplomatic. And then they'll get what they want. You can eventually get them to the right place to have that big reveal or the big fight or whatever it is that you want to throw in front of them. That having been said, all of that is the kind of role play side of illusion of choice. And that's not a system specific thing. But the community recently was talking about the mechanical side of illusion of choice. Is there an optimal action to take at any given moment? Is there an optimal action to take at every given moment? Right? And the thing, I guess the answer to that, is there an optimal action to take at any given moment, is probably yes, but like, you don't know what it is, right? Like in every situation, to purport that you understand the optimal action is silly, because that implies that you always have, you as a player specifically, always have all of the information, right? In order to be able to plan anything with 100% certainty, you need to have 100% of the relevant information. If you think that shooting an arrow at, or a flaming arrow at the ice creature is the best possible thing to do, and you shoot the flaming arrow at the ice creature, but oh, by the way, if you miss, there's dynamite everywhere and it will just explode and kill the hostages you're trying to rescue. That's a good way of kind of punishing the optimal or the obvious optimal choice, punishing not having your characters do a little bit more scouting ahead or pre-planning or research in game, so that you kind of teach them that you won't always have all the information, and that you can't always assume that you have all the information, and that you need to like put a little bit more work into discovering those things. If your players do always have all the information, I would recommend not always giving them all the information, because then they get surprised more. You know what I'm saying?
I will also say that one of the most important rules in Pathfinder 2nd Edition and most RPGs is that these rules are just guidelines and are not necessarily how everything has to work, right? And someone who is running a game who feels like they have to run everything exactly rules specific and has to be exactly correct runs the risk of not allowing your players to experiment and try to have fun, and you end up in a rut where your characters or your players end up doing the same things over and over and over and over again, because you as a GM have not looked at expanding and looking at the situation differently. Like, for example, the example Croog gave, which is, yeah, they can shoot their arrow, but there's all this dynamite, right? Well, dynamite technically doesn't exist in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, right? But like, you know what? It does now, because you're the fucking you know what I mean? Like this allows you to do the things that you want to do. Yeah.
Or even just like, I know this is like a meme, and it's kind of like, I think I think the saying "rule of cool," right? It started off as like a really kind of thought-provoking thing, which is like, oh, should I just allow this because it would be the coolest possible thing that can happen in this situation, even if it goes outside the scope of what is allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of became a meme because it's like, oh, all the players just want me to allow everything because rule of cool, ha 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 ha. If that's the group you're playing with, then this doesn't apply. You can't like force this sort of like group collective agreement that you won't abuse rule of cool. But if you work with or if you play with a group that is open to the idea of not abusing rule of cool, then rule of cool becomes one of the best things. Because, like, for example, and I swear this is starting to sound like a Court of Corvids advertisement, but it's just the game I play most frequently, so I have the most Court of Corvids examples. In Court of Corvids, there's a situation where I wanted to use an ability that my character has in a way that literally was outside of the scope of the way the ability worked. It was way out of range, and it was way more drastic of an effect than the ability would allow. And I was trying to think of a way to do something that would achieve a similar effect. And Jake's response was, "What are you trying to do?" And I said, "This is what I'm trying to do." And Jake was just like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. I'll let you do it. And this is the check you'll have to make. I'll add a little bit of extra challenge. You won't just be able to say, I use this thing." And so I did the thing. I succeeded, and I got the effect that I wanted, even though I couldn't technically do the thing that I had just done. And it added a whole layer of the encounter, right? That I don't think you were necessarily planning for. At least it didn't seem like you were planning for it. And
I don't know. I don't remember which situation. This happens a lot. Like last time I remember was
this was the chase scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because the last time I was thinking Robin used it, which was like Robin wanted to change their appearance. Like they're doing gorilla, but they were like, I kind of want to like look more daunting or more scary. Is it possible to have yes, but it gives you it can look however you want, but you know. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. There's that thing. There's that like you can flavor anything however you want almost if it doesn't change the way that anything works. And then there's also, you don't have to stick with the rules in a mechanical sense. You can say, I will give you more than you expect if you're willing to make additional sacrifices, but potentially additional sacrifices in order to get the thing that you want, right? Mm-hmm. It's a give and take. If you've played any system long enough, or I mean, I'd argue if you've like read enough of the rules and are familiar with enough of the general RPG landscape, you should be able to say, I will take this feature and give it 2 extra usefulness for 2 extra difficulty. However, you want to add arbitrary units that aren't real, right? But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you should be able to roughly balance those on the fly, and I think that's kind of what makes for interesting role play is when GMs have the ability to do that, to manipulate the rules in a way that is spontaneous and fair and fun.
Yeah. Let's go through the next couple of them a little bit quick. I think these next ones are pretty easy. Thoughts on the current AP opinions? So I will say I'm not a big fan of adventure paths, just because I would much rather run a story that I want to tell versus like reading the rules and reading the lore and understanding all this other stuff, because it's really hard for me. I'm gonna be honest, it's really, really hard for me to keep other people's things straight in my head, and so it's hard for me to do that. That being said, I have heard a lot of praise from our GMs on Callendale about Agents of Edgewater, which only caveat I will say is it definitely started coming out at like the worst possible time, because it was very much like at the peak, not the peak, but it was very much in the middle of like BLM, ACAB, right then, and then the first Agents of Edgewater is, you're working for the police, and you're just like Edgewatch. Sorry, not Edgewater. Sorry, my bad. I like Edgewater better now that I say it. But yeah, it came out at a really weird, awkward point, because it was very much like, hey, you're going to be playing a cop, and you're just like,
but I don't want to.
Yeah. So you haven't looked at any of them, have you?
I've read through them, but it wasn't from like a story perspective. It was I just like to see how they're formatted and how they're like put together from like a strictly utilitarian perspective, because I think that's a big problem with those kinds of books, is that there's at any given moment there's too much information for a GM to remember, and so I just kind of like looking and seeing how they put them together. I think it's really hard to get that kind of thing right. I think they did a good enough job with it, right?
Mhm.
And I think we reviewed, or was that Starfinder? I think we've reviewed an Adventure Path.
We reviewed the first book of Ash. Oh gosh,
Of Ash. Age of Ashes? Is that what it is?
Age of Ashes, maybe. Yeah, which we liked the first. Like we liked the layout. There were some like things that we didn't like about like how they set things up, or why they spent like entire pages on explaining how something works. I have heard, and I've tried to run it, and I have TPK'd a couple times in that book. I will say it's probably not their best AP that exists out there. But it's also their first one that they ever wrote, and they started writing it while they were doing the rules. So I think there's a little bit of there. All right, next question. Favorite archetype? Mine's easy. Ritualist. I will explain why. One, it allows you to take something that normally takes multiple people to do and reduces it, and you get better at doing the thing, and it flat out just gives you rituals versus having to ask your GM to create a storyline to allow you to get them, because sometimes it's just not fun to try and like make something about your character. Like one of the things I hate about Rangers is like, oh, I gotta go to the store and buy some arrows. Like I hate that. I don't count ammo in my games because I don't find that aspect fun. And so it's like Ritualist takes an aspect of the game, which is, hey, you have to go out in the world and find these, and it just goes, you get these. And so that's why I like the Ritualist. You become better at it, and you get things for free. So, what about you, Croog? You got one?
Mine is Weapon Improviser, because improvised weapons is one of my favorite like play styles, just for the sheer RP of it. Like being able to say that you beat somebody up with like a frying pan or whatever, like, and random objects, and like the fun descriptive ways that you can do that. It's really fun. It's not the strongest by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the memest, right? That's kind of like where it excels, is creating meme encounters. And I just like it. It's the closest thing to like a monk, like kicking a I don't know, like a fire poker off into somebody's face and having it knock them unconscious, like those old Bruce Lee movies. You know what I'm talking about? Like, that's kind of what it is in my head. And that's why I like it so
every
much.
Jackie Chan fight in the existence of Jackie Chan movies.
Yeah. Yep, where he kicks chairs at people and trips them with it. I like Dayton in chat says folding chair, which is a wrestling joke that I think is hilarious. Yeah, that's where I'm at with archetypes. I definitely Weapon Improviser.
All right.
The next one is, as a player or a GM, have you ever been in a game with someone who either didn't play well with the rest of the group and or was straight up problematic, and how did you handle it? I'll go first. Nope, not really. Not that bad.
I'll go second. Yes. Well, one, Croog reminded me, I've had very problematic GMs in the past, and we basically just went like, deuces, homie, you're being problematic and you don't want to do anything about it. We originally started by going, hey, this is uncomfortable. And then we basically got, well, this is what I'm doing, so you can take it or leave it. And we said, cool, we're going to leave it. And then he was like, but yeah. And I'm like, no, you're problematic. This is not, no. And then as a GM, I had a player who felt like getting drunk while playing was fun. And when he would get to a drunk level, he would make really not stupid decisions. He would make very, very inappropriate decisions. The story I always tell is We were playing a game. Everyone was in a town. They had just saved the town, and the town was celebrating. It was supposed to be a super chill episode. I wasn't even streaming at that time. It was supposed to be a super chill like session. And he got a little tipsy and decided that he wanted to murder one of the civilians in the middle of the dance floor. And so I, of course, said, sure, I can't tell you no. Like, that's what your character wants to do. That's what you're going to do. So he kills a random citizen, and he then rolled a very high charisma and convinced everyone that it was someone else that was at the party that did it, except for one of the other players saw this happen and was like, no, that I am a lawful good character. That's not okay. Not only did he kill a random person because he just wanted to kill a person, but he also lied about it. Like, no, not going to happen. So he turned around and they fought, and it was the first time I've ever had PvP in my sessions. They killed that character, and instead of allowing him to build a new character and come back, we said, no, it's probably for the best that you find a different group. So yeah, those are my stories.
So I think the general rule of thumb here is if you're in a situation that you can't resolve by being diplomatic, then just bounce.
Yep.